Oh, Charlottesville, Virginia warblers, warblers, and more warblers. All right, you got the
Hey.
migration coming in. Nice.
Anybody see anything exciting here in Sarasota?
Yeah, that's a problem.
Swallowtails,
Yeah, I know it. It's been very quiet here.
swallowtail kites and a kite nest.
Oh,
Ah,
nice.
swallowtail kites. That's great.
In a kite nest.
Oh, in a
Babies.
nest.
I did see the baby common gallinules that are at the boardwalk over there. They're very cute.
So cute.
Yeah.
I saw some vultures outside.
All right.
Honestly, they were in the breeze.
Nice.
We saw some skippers.
Oh,
I
Tammy
have baby
Longaberger.
mockingbirds in my yard. They're very
Have-
cute.
Tammy Longaberger in Indian Beach saw 4 pileated woodpeckers in her small backyard yesterday. That's great.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
2 juvie eagles, David Glosser. Backyard, I'm assuming that's Sarasota. Great. That's
great.
exciting to see young eagles. All right. Well, it's 7:08. I think we got a
Let's
little
do
late
it.
start. Let's just get started. So, here we go. All right, Sarah.
Okay, that's me. First, I want to thank everyone so much for participating in the giving challenge for you that participated. We raised $21,000, and with the match from the Patterson Foundation, we got $41,000 in 24 hours of donations. So that was really, really
Amazing.
awesome. Our plan is to give 20,000 to the quads to continue the project over there. We're pretty much finished with phase 1, and we're going to be moving on to phase 2, which will be the natural play area, the lawn, the picnic pavilion, and the restrooms and parking lot that are going to be on that next one. So very, very exciting about that. We're going to get some new technology to make all of this run a little more seamlessly in the future. And then we also are looking at doing some webcams for the feeders so everybody can see what's going on at the feeders, and possibly some trail cams for some of the nest boxes to be able to monitor the owls and see what's going on there. And then we have some legal fees for the Smith farm. So we are engaging a law firm for the Smith farm. Not much to say about it other than we are going to continue to support the county's unanimous decision to deny the rezone at the Smith farm. And we are getting a little assistance in supporting them. And we will continue to oppose development beyond its current zoning as long as this goes on. We're in it for the long haul, and we're going to continue to make sure that that property is protected to the best of our ability. Yeah, so the other thing we need, and we put a couple of requests out for this, but if anybody likes working with kids, and this is not a huge commitment, you don't have to come up with programming or anything. We have all the programming. We just need volunteers who like working with kids. So if you like working with children and are willing to go to a couple festivals during the year, we have a booth, we have an activity to do with them. We just need people to work the booth and are willing to work with children. Because I know not everyone loves working with kids, but some people really love working with kids, and there's retired teachers and stuff. So if you're interested, contact editor@sarasotaAudubon.org. That would be awesome.
All right. And that was it. I'm going to stop.
That's it. I'm going to hand it over to Margie. Margie's going to say Sarah Reisinger, but it is Margie.
I can fix that.
Oh, you mean I don't look like you, Sarah?
No.
There you are. You're Margie now.
So very nice to see everybody here, and to welcome everybody online, and to thank Sarah and Karen and my partner, Leslie Austin, for their patience in the details of figuring out how to do a hybrid. I'm not sure it's easy, but we're really happy to try to do this so we can meet people in person and have wonderful speakers like Benjamin Dimmitt, who is with us tonight. You're in Asheville right now, is that correct?
I'm in Asheville. Yes, it's hazy, low clouds, comfortable, but a little humid.
It it is really hot here, even though it's,
I can see there are some Karen's actually outside, so yeah, that makes me
yeah, it's pretty darn
That's
hot.
a
So
fake background. I'm
Oh,
in
is it?
Asheville also. That's a photo.
Well, that's a painting.
Yeah, that's a
I'm
beautiful
really not
painting.
in a daffodil garden.
well, we wouldn't have daffodils in Florida, I guess, anyway. So the wonders of technology, but also the confusion of technology. Anyway, thank you everybody online and here in the Nature Center for your tremendous tolerance for our explorations in the leading edge of technology for groups. So I'm very happy to introduce Benjamin. Very nice to meet you, Benjamin.
Nice to meet you.
So this is Margie Haas. Finally, we're meeting. And Benjamin is going to be talking about an unflinching look, elegy for wetlands. And he's a noted photographer. He will take us on a special tour of Chassahowitzka. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yeah, I just pushed it
Chassahowitzka.
That's every syllable.
Chassahowitzka.
Yeah.
Chassahowitzka National Wildlife Refuge, which, in case you all don't know, is 60 miles roughly north of Tampa on the Gulf Coast, right? Is that correct, Benjamin?
Yes.
Yes, good, good. And his photography is really celebrated, and a copy of his book is cruising around. If you can pass it on, we have a copy here in the Nature Center. So sadly, Mr. Dimmitt's photographs examine and memorialize a unique North American ecosystem in decline. So this story is housed in his beautiful book, again, Unflinching Look, Elegy for Wetlands, which was published by the University of Georgia Press in 2023. And it contains 85 duotone photographs and also a scientific analysis and critical interpretation of what happened to this wetlands of this National Wildlife Refuge. And as we will see tonight, his pictures will reveal the impact of several factors that are causing loss of an entire ecosystem here on the Gulf Coast. And I'll talk more about this probably in Q&A, but I think this is a cautionary tale for all the other threats that we face, especially to wetlands here in Florida and in the larger areas of the United States. So, but first to talk more about Benjamin Dimmitt. He was born and raised in Clearwater on the Gulf Coast. He graduated from Eckerd College in St. Petersburg, where he studied photography and printmaking. He also studied printmaking in Florence, Italy, and London, England. He moved to New York City in 1976 and continued his studies in photography there and in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And from 2001 to 2013, he held an adjunct professor position at the International Center of Photography, teaching black and white photography and landscape photography in Manhattan. Yay, my old stomping grounds. His photography investigates interdependence, competition, survival, and mortality in the natural environment. He's most curious about places where land and water merge and landscapes with animated and layered growth that exhibit the instinct for survival and the persistence of life. So his photographs have been exhibited in museums, galleries, and festivals internationally, and are held in numerous major museums and private collections. So welcome, Benjamin Dimmitt. Thank you so much.
Am I ready? I mean, excuse me.
Take
Are
it
you
away.
ready for me?
Yes. I'm going to turn off the video. Here we go.
Here's what I thought we would do, and that is for me to read from the book that I published in 2023. And we look at some slides and then talk, discuss, ask questions last, okay?
Perfect.
I don't think that's revolutionary. I'm good. You're going to be seeing the top of my head for a little while I read. I can't lift this thing up and hold it. So I'm going to quote somebody here who's a well-known landscape photographer, and I love how he thinks. And his name is Emmett Gowan, and I saw an exhibit of his at Yale when I was still living in New York, and I saw this on the wall. This was next to the doorway on your way in. Here we go. In a landscape photograph, both the mind and heart need to find their proper place. Before the landscape, we look for an invitation to stand without premeditation. It is always, in some sense, our home. At times, we may also look for an architecture of light and a poetry of atmosphere, which welcomes the eye into a landscape of natural process. It is also the map, the evidence of the thing itself. May it also always be a vision of the double world, the world of appearances and the invisible world all at once. Even when the landscape is greatly disfigured or brutalized, it is always deeply animated from within. When one really sees an awesome, vast, and terrible place, we tremble at the feelings we experience as our sense of wholeness is reorganized by what we see. The heart seems to withdraw and the body seems always to diminish. At such a moment, our feelings reach for an understanding. This is the gift of a landscape photograph, that the heart finds a place to stand. This is mostly about the place so that you get a better sense of it than just my photographs. Only decades ago, Gin Clear Springs, more than 700 of them, were described by the naturalist Archie Carr as the singular blessing of the Florida landscape. Visitors from all over the world traveled to Florida specifically to experience the springs, their manatees, and the magical runs of light. Today, each spring tells its own version of loss: reduced volume, increased nutrient pollution, and saltwater contamination. At few other sites in this trifecta of stressors so visibly affecting the landscape, a few other sites. The source of spring discharge for rivers like the Chassahowitzka is the groundwater in the aquifer, which is now only partially replenished by rainfall soaking into the ground. Millions of gallons of fresh spring water are pumped from the ancient underground limestone and sprayed on lawns and fields, run through showers, flush down toilets, and used to generate electricity. Moreover, our politicians permit private corporations to siphon millions more gallons into plastic bottles for sale around the country. The result, water flow emerging from the Chassahowitzka Spring system has declined by more than half, from 138 cubic feet per second before 1980 to less than 31 in 2017. Secondly, the water that still bubbles out of the spring is polluted by nitrate, a plant growth nutrient that originates mostly from fertilizers and animal and human waste deposited on the land surface or via septic tanks. Nitrate pollution fuels the growth of algae blooms and the nitrogen is for fertilizer for golf courses also, which are smothering springs and the rivers they feed and putting human health at risk in the Chassahowitzka. Nitrate levels have doubled since 1980. I'm moving forward. Although many of Florida's government, many of Florida's, oh, yeah. My first visit to Chassahowitzka National Wildlife Refuge was in 1977 when a friend asked my brother and me to join him fishing there. I'd never seen such a massive estuary. Crystal clear water rose up out of springs, moved slowly for 5 miles through a hardwood swamp, then through brackish marshes and out into saltwater bays. I grew up in Clearwater, which is only 70 miles away, but this part of the Gulf of Mexico coastline was new to me. I had never seen a Florida coast without a beach or a barrier island. In 1985, I returned to the Chassahowitzka with a companion to spend a day canoeing. We were dropped off at a small blue spring deep in a forest, and we paddled all day through shallow, pristine creeks and thick palm hammocks before returning to the launch ramp before dark. I was captivated by this quintessentially Floridian environment. Around the same time, friends built a cabin on pilings at the edge of the wildlife refuge. I began visiting regularly to paddle and to photograph. In 2004, I started a photographic project titled Primitive Florida that explored low-lying areas in Florida that I felt were vulnerable to storms, rising seas, and development. The Chassahowitzka became my favorite subject for that project. I first noticed the thinning of forests and increasing number of dead trees in 2014. I hadn't been to the swamp in 2 years, and the damage from the encroaching salt water horrified me. This is my native landscape, and the environmental damage was heartbreaking to behold. My first response was to paddle out and photograph the deforestation. What had been verdant semi-tropical forest had become an open plain of grasses relieved by dying palms and dead hardwood trees. Sable palms are the last to expire. This saltwater intrusion is a widespread phenomenon occurring all along the Big Bend section of Florida's Gulf Coast from Weeki Wachee to St. Mark's. Has anyone been to this area? No?
We're on a webinar, so it's really hard to get feedback. Anybody in the... Yeah, sorry. I've been there.
Good. Okay.
Yes, there are 4 people here live who have been there.
It's very remote. Back when I was first visiting it, no one had heard of it, couldn't guess how to pronounce it, and that's why a lot of people went up there. This is a little background history, so that you get a sense why it looks the way it does. In 1910, the logging in Milltown of Centralia was established for 1,700 workers and their families. Tidewater Cypress Company built railroad trestles into the swamp so that the virgin forest of prized cypress trees could be harvested and processed at the mill. At its peak, the mill produced 100,000 board feet per day. After all the cypress trees were cut, red cedar trees were logged to make pencils and cigar boxes. In 1926, when all the accessible and usable trees were removed, the sawmill at Centralia was closed, and the company moved up the coast to harvest more virgin forest. The remains of the mill town disappeared during the Great Depression. A friend of mine, Pat, who built a swamp house some 40 years ago, it was 40 then, 45 years now, when the forests were thick and shady. Now his home has no tree cover and is surrounded by dying palm saplings, dead trees, and stumps. When I last saw him, he asked me to say in my book that he and the other swamp dwellers want their water back from the villages. That's the biggest offender there as far as overpumping from the aquifer. In 2014, I began photographing in the salt-damaged sawgrass savannas and spring creeks at Chassahowitzka as a way of examining and reckoning with the ecosystem loss and of understanding what was becoming of my native Florida. I narrowed my focus to a remote area that I know and love. And my intention in bearing witness to this loss really has been to portray the ruined landscape with passion and beauty. I really never thought what the end use of this. I never thought I'd be doing what I'm doing now with this work. To help document the progress of the saltwater intrusion, I have rephotographed landscapes that I first photographed as many as 36 years ago. These rephotographic diptychs are difficult to produce since my old film cameras don't have GPS to guide me to the exact location of my archival photograph. Most often, I use the trees in the earlier photograph to help position myself for the follow-up photograph. Unfortunately, the deforestation caused by rising sea levels has killed off many of these locator trees. When presented together, the two photographs become one grim fact. Swamp fog is common in the winter. Spring-fed creeks are consistently 72 degrees. The air is very humid, and on winter nights, temperatures can be between 40 and 50 degrees. Initially, I avoided photographing in the fog because those images by nature are less clear. Fog also carries connotations of prettiness, romanticism, and sentimentality. The fog, though, is part of these wetlands. The air is as wet as the water, and the land is as wet as the creeks. I've come to see the fog as a metaphor for the evolving future of this place. It alludes to the slow disappearance of this landscape. I'd like to read from this. There were 5 of us writing for the book, and one of them is, I think she's retired. I think she's younger than I am. Taught at Harvard, and I asked her to write, and she said, sure. She'd never been down there, and she had a completely different take on it, which is a wonderful thing about having a bunch of different writers. She just told me what she wanted to write about, and the editor said, okay, so that's what we have. And she's referring to me by my last name. Dimmitt's role as a maker of evidence has led him away from simple celebration of an idyllic wetland. Perhaps it is too late for that now. The changes Dimmitt has recorded are fatal. The world he moved through even 20 years ago has vanished. The deeply damaged place he shows us now will continue to decline, and these images will become a record of the past. Artist and theorist Robert Adams asserts that the three verities of landscape photography are geography, autobiography, and metaphor. This is a useful lens for viewing what Dimmitt has given us here. As geography, the photographs in the book are lasting records of the physical features of a little-known place, made both more valuable and more poignant because they embody once avoidable and now inevitable loss. They are informed by Dimmitt's own story and the passion and knowledge that come from his lifelong relationship with a tiny and difficult piece of the planet. And the metaphor? These delicate swamps, hammocks, and wetlands offer no possibility of dramatic conquest, human triumph, or godlike views, nor do they need to. These luminous captures of what one man has seen over time may remind us how to value the different quiet places and call us to humility, apology, and action. This is my, I think it's my last reading. Someone punked out, and the editor had in mind certain blend of words and photography and this and that, and he tried somebody else and they didn't work, so he asked me to write the epilogue. And I, as a photography and not a writer, I had to look it up, and so I wrote something, and it was just, it's my observations. When I was, and this is it, it's not very long. When I was a college freshman 50 years ago, we learned, this is true, and this was at Eckerd College, and I'm surprised they were teaching this in 1972. It's funny that it had an impact on me all these years later. When I was a college freshman 50 years ago, we learned that sea levels around the world would rise because of global warming. This seemed preposterous at the time, but we now find ourselves in a global climate crisis. At the Chassahowitzka, I can gaze around the spring head where the saltwater hasn't yet had an impact and be reminded of how lush, verdant, and unspoiled those creeks and forests were just 10 to 15 years ago. A glance downstream, however, reveals cloudy water, mats of algae, and stark remains of a dead forest. I am deeply saddened by the ruin at Chassahowitzka. It was a sublime element of my native landscape. I'm also angry that these unique and beautiful wetlands are being poisoned and drowned. I regret that future generations won't be able to take in and be enriched by the fragile interconnectedness there. Mostly, though, I'm disappointed that we didn't act responsibly and do the right thing to prevent what is occurring now and what lies ahead. It would have been so easy to do a better job than previous generations, but for the most part, we haven't. As a result, we and our successors will struggle with extensive flooding like Hurricane, oh, what's the last one? Helene? Yeah. Maybe it was bad there. I've been told, I've seen photographs. Obviously, I believe that if the necessary actions aren't taken then by the world's leaders, it will soon be inescapable. Deep in the Chassahowitzka swamp is an old growth cypress tree that was passed over by when the virgin forests were harvested 100 years ago. According to locals, there were originally 3 hollow cypress trees in this area that weren't cut down by loggers. They were spared because it didn't make sense. It didn't make business sense to harvest imperfect trees when the forests were full of perfect ones. Two of these remaining cypress trees, died in the ensuing 100 years. In December 2020, I visited the lone survivor, now more than 3 centuries old. The hollow trunk that saved its life is visible in its upper reaches. It's a massive specimen. At eye level, it appears transparent and illusory with only shadows defining it. Nearby springs have sustained the cypress tree for over the centuries. However, these springs are becoming saltier as Gulf waters advance up the creeks and into the aquifer. Scientists have shown that trees communicate with each other through the air and through their root system. Studies also reveal that trees are very dependent on each other. Primary topics of their communications appear to be alarm and stress. I can only imagine the stressful dialogue between trees 100 years ago when the loggers felled the virgin forests there. I wonder what the communications have been like since the beginning of this century, as forests along the coast have been slowly poisoned by saltwater. The same fate will soon befall the remaining cypress as the sea level rise continues unabated. This must have been a frightening period for the 300-year-old survivor, as the unique and unspoiled estuary sinks silently into the Gulf. This is really the end of this. I did my last photography for this book. They told me I just had to close the book because the other person had got fired, basically. I did my last photography for this book in December 22. I went for a paddle in the late afternoon the day before we left. It had been very hot, and it was very refreshing to be on the creek. The breeze pushed the bow of the canoe around when I stopped to photograph. It was very quiet. No leaves or fronds rustled in the breeze because there were no living trees around me. I listened hard, and in the distance I could hear tapping. I paddled further and identified the tapping as the sound of woodpeckers hammering away at the acres and acres of dead trees. It wasn't overwhelming, but it sounded like ruin. That's the book, or that's what I like to read in the book.
Are you going to share some of your photos?
Yes, I have. I wonder if we can get there. I have to go inside and see if I can find the
find the share button.
There it is. Oh my God, how simple. So I selected it. Do I go ahead and hit share?
Yes.
Okay.
There we go.
See how easy that is?
And then play. I think you want to hit play, right? See it up at the top?
I do. Will it play at my speed, or
I don't know how you have it set up.
Oh, it gives me the full frame. Yes. Okay.
Yes.
This is great. This is fine. This is what it looked like in 1977. And I went, as I mentioned, with a couple of friends. And you see a train trestle there in the middle ground, or a ways into the photograph. And though that is, those are the remains of cypress trestle. And it took me reading the history, doing research, to learn that I had seen that for decades. The remains there when those guys built a trestle to go from their mill that's right on the banks of a creek. They built a trestle to take the train into the middle of the forest to pull the cypress trees out. They use cypress trees, and cypress does not fall apart and does not rot. It's also fresh water, not salt. So that's been there for a really, really long time. It's still there. And this is probably 1988. And that's what Spring-Fed Creek looked like. To me, this is one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen in Florida. And this is I shoot film. There's no Photoshop. I use, as I mentioned somewhere in that reading, a heavy medium format camera for which I have to use a tripod. So these are very deliberate and slow moving. If I'm standing in a creek, shooting from the canoe is a different strategy, a different technique. I am going to be going, I have not gone back to the swamp since I stopped shooting for the book, which would have been, I think, 2022. They told me to stop shooting because they had to make the book. And I needed to be making the photographs, getting my negative scans so that I could prepare the files for the book. And I would still be photographing there because it has changed dramatically because of Hurricane Helene. And these places like this don't look like this anymore. This part of what I've loaded for the keynote this part of it are all old photographs of mine from much earlier this century. You can't buy that film anymore. Not that it's the best thing ever, but I will be going. The scientist who got involved with the book says it's an academic press. They needed to have legitimate facts and real information. So I found a guy who graduated from USF in St. Pete, who is a PhD in studying water. And he now lives over at where they made the nuke bomb, Oak Ridge. And he was very happy to have his graphs and studies in a book. And I'm going to use him for a book that I have already started for the University of Florida Press that is of mangroves. And he has gone on to do a lot of work on mangroves, and he's working for the government, obviously. But these are the diptychs. This photograph shows on the left what this place, that part of that creek looked like in 2000, I don't know, sometime last century, a long time ago. And when the photograph on the right is from 2021. It's sort of, these were the last thing I did. These diptychs that show the same spot, the same view, with 10 or 15, 20 years between the two photographs. So it's not pleasant work going up there. view. This is my friend's cabin. He built it in the shade under swamp trees on a creek, and those trees were all gone. And I think his cabin is gone now too, because of Helene. This is a view from a boat shed, and I would go up on the roof there and recreate the photograph I'd done a decade or two before. So that's probably 20 years worth of climate change. Saltwater intrusion, same spot. Same spot. Oh, that scientist guy that worked with me downloaded these from satellite. Those are our little cabins. The one on the left is about 15 years older than the photograph on the right. And if you look at it very closely, you can see how much space there is between the trees. Whereas the older photograph on the left, it looks very dense, and it was. The longer I stayed, the more I went down and photographed, the more I wanted to photograph, and the more, I don't want to say fun, but the more I tried to make them good photographs, or maybe even a beautiful photograph. It's very easy to very straightforwardly shoot a mess of dead trees, but in this case, I was paddling past this day after day on one trip, and I hadn't figured out how to get the shot, and I finally did get in the water with a tripod and make the photograph late in the afternoon. Well, these were all lush forests. And the longer I shot, the fewer trees there were, obviously. That's it.
Wow, that's pretty dramatic. So let's see. I'm waiting for.
It's disabled by the host.
Oh, there we go. Sorry, Sarah. There we go. I had to, because I turned your video off, I had to prompt you. So, okay. Any questions?
Any questions from in here?
Looking for the
Yeah,
Q&A.
So
It's kind of hard to ask me something specific. It's a
yeah, I am.
a difficult
I
body
would
of
like
work.
to. What?
It's a difficult body of work.
Oh, yes. And their photographs are beautiful. So what you're saying, excuse me, I mean, I read part of your book too, but so what you're saying is that this whole freshwater creek is completely polluted and destroyed by runoff, fertilizer, climate change, and this is where we are right now. Is that what you're saying? That photo, can you put the photo back, please?
Oh, sorry.
Tell me
Can
how.
you share again? Just go down to share.
Oh, never mind. That's all right. Does anybody here have questions?
Well, ask that question again. It's a good one.
Well,
Put it.
if you were going to summarize, it's the whole refuge has been destroyed, or it's the clear water where the manatees and where you went, and the water, it was good fishing, it was clear, and the trees were growing. Is that the enormous contrast? Your photos show the dramatic difference.
The But here I'm going to be going up there and here I am in Asheville. In next month in June, I will go down because this project is being exhibited in St. Petersburg, and I will go with some of their audience out to or up north, up to the swamp, and then out into kayaks. And there it is. Didn't I get this?
No, I did it.
Right, right. And
Okay,
what-
and what I will be seeing then is the further continuation of what I stopped photographing when my editor said, stop shooting and give us the photographs so we can make the book, because I had people who wanted to see the book. I don't know what the end of the arc is. What is it going to look like? It's going to be all the trees are going to be pushed down by the wind and the seas as when hurricanes come. The overuse and the polluting of the water will make it not very desirable to build a home near there. Most people didn't rebuild after the hurricane. But it's a very quick changeover, environmental changeover. Species that couldn't take the salt are now gone. A lot of trees their roots go into the limestone bottom of the creek and have something to hold on to, but often what their roots are in, this is all different sorts of trees, from palm trees to oak trees, is muck, very rich muck. And those big trees, oak, bay, hickory, all these different trees that love that rich, clean water, couldn't hold on through hurricanes like Helene. And when they go down, then the creeks are less navigable.
right.
A big hobby there is fishing. If the water gets too salty because of the salt water getting into the aquifer, then no one's going to be able to catch any fish. And there are a lot of good old boys living up there whose living depends on fishing.
Right.
I'm trying to think where, Florida panthers try and run out of that swamp. And once you get to US 19, there's people everywhere in shopping malls and condos and a lot of growth, because that's what's going on up there. There aren't any industries. It's retirees and golf courses. So
was this hit directly by Helene? Was it the area that...
I'm visualizing a map of the eastern Gulf of Mexico, and my recall is that Helene kind of bobbed and weaved a little bit and went north up the coast. And
north of there, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right north of there is where it went inland, and it ended up here and moved on. But that is I don't want to say the coup d'etat, but it'll never look as good as it did then.
Right, but these are both taken before Helene, correct? Both these photos?
Yes.
The ones that are on the screen now?
Yes.
Those are taken very far apart.
But the one that, all right, so you've got the full forest, and then you have the ghost forest on the right, and that was taken in 22. Did I hear you say that?
When I said 22, I think it was referring to something else.
Something else?
I'm not sure which photograph you're looking at.
Okay.
But I have a screenshot sitting up here on
Yeah, That's what I'm looking at. The
That one?
screenshot. Yeah.
Boy, it's really easy to answer when people hang exhibits of this work. I just tell them to buy a copy of the book, and then you can see the whole story.
But weren't all your pictures done before Helene? Because Helene was
Yes,
2024.
yes, they were, because I looked
Yeah.
at the book.
That's all I'm saying is this is not a result of Helene. Helene has done more.
Well,
since then.
so are there any more questions? Let's move ahead. Are there any more questions here or online? Karen,
let's see,
any more
there's-
questions?
I'm looking on Q&A. Where will the exhibit be held?
There are two.
Okay.
Let's see. I wrote it down because I try once in a while. I remember once in a while to be good about promoting. There is a gallery in St. Petersburg called Wild Space Gallery, and it's the venue is the Florida Wildlife Corridor. Have you heard of them at all?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
My niece is one of the people that runs that, and that exhibit is 37 of the 40 that I made for a prior exhibit. This is too easy to get confused. I had an exhibit at Eckerd College, where I went to college in St. Pete. The ladies from Florida Wildlife Corridor came to my exhibit because that's also in St. Petersburg. And when I finished, there were people I knew, people I didn't know. It was alumni weekend. And these two women came over and they both work at the gallery. And they said, "Can we have that as your exhibit?" And I said, "I'm sorry, what do you mean?" And that's what's happening in June. They,
So you're talking there in June?
I'm going to talk, but they're showing the exhibit 37 of the 40 prints.
Right.
And I'm thrilled because there are people who want to see it, and this is up their alley. And it's interesting for me to go, when I was making the book, the publisher, the University of Georgia Press, suggested to me the book may do very well. And I said, I hope so, because I don't think anyone is going to buy photographs of this for their home. Although there are some, I feel there's some very beautiful photographs in there. And they said, perhaps. And I will be exhibiting what I showed at Eckerd College, and what I will show at Florida Wildlife Corridor. I'll be showing that same thing. It's traveling to the University of Georgia. They finally said that.
Great.
And I feel vindicated because we made the book that I wanted to make. And my feeling was, if someone wants an exhibit from it, that's a whole different thing.
Right. Karen, are there any more questions?
There was one, the degradation and loss of habitat. Saltwater intrusion, that is, the water table is raised so much that it degrades the less salt tolerant species. It seems nearer the river edge and thinner than in the top photo. He says, I've kayaked the Chaz and saw a lot of fish last month. The portion I saw still seemed nice, but it was his first visit. So
the nice thing about it is the tide changes. You can go there and it'll be one way, and go another day, it'll be another way. And the same with storms. Mm-hmm. That place is in a, I don't want to call it a hurricane alley, but they come through there regularly. And that's why there are people who live inland near the dock. They can drive up and launch their boat and park it somewhere and go out for the day. Anybody who has a shack out there, it's out. The open Gulf of Mexico is within a mile of you. It's all pretty shallow. Those places are not built well, intentionally, because everyone knows that's going to happen.
Right.
Right. Okay, so thank you very much.
This was incredible. Thank you,
Your
Benjamin.
photos are amazing, and thank you very much for your perspective on the decimation. And let's all pray that it doesn't get any worse, that it
Yeah.
gets at
I
least
wish,
slows
wish I
down
was
and
wrong.
stops.
I wish I was wrong, but
We do too. Jenny
Yeah,
Cherry
I can't
says,
see
from an artist's
that.
perspective, your work is absolutely stunning. Well done with black and white, the value scale, the mood, emotion, all are beautiful and moving. I believe Ansel Adams would be proud and Clyde Butcher has friendly competition. How's that? Speaking as a native Floridian, the comparisons are heartbreaking, moving in its own right. The land looks sickly because it probably is. Hopefully, your photos will move people to the right action. Thank you, Jenny.
Very
That
good.
was very well put. So,
Thank you so much.
thank you.
all
How
right.
the heck do I get out
Take
of here?
care. Good night.
Do I just
We'll
quit?
see you all in the fall.
Yeah. Yep.
Well,
I'm
if you
gonna-
can, go to St. Pete,
Yep. Well,
And
hopefully some will.
see
So,
these photographs up on a wall.
yeah. All right. So I'm going to end the webinar, but thank you, Benjamin, so much.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you.